Hello and welcome back to Finding Sanctuary. This is a series of discussions between Buddhist nuns about the Therigatha poems, which are the verses of the senior nuns from the Buddha's time. I'm Ayya Vimalanyani, and with me today is Ayya Yeshe again. Thank you for joining us again, Ayya.
Thank you.
So I was thinking today we can dive straight into your poem. I'm going to share my screen again, and then maybe you can read out the poem. That would be nice. Would you read out your poem, Ayya?
Sure. She's known as Vira because of her heroic qualities. A nun with faculties developed, she bears her final body, having vanquished Mara and his mount.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. It's a very, very beautiful, inspiring poem. Actually, this poem, I almost would have picked this poem for the title of this series. Like, I'm calling it Finding Sanctuary because that is from another verse, but I almost would have called it either Heroic Qualities or Vanquishing Mara, because I feel that, you know, such a beautiful and empowering way of talking about those women's poems. So, yeah, almost would have made it. Yeah, exactly. Heroines. Yeah.
It's so interesting in this poem because it doesn't, it's almost beyond gender, you know, that she sees herself as a warrior, and she's vanquished the foe of ignorance and defilements, you know, so she's very different to all the poems in this collection are so diverse. You can see that the nuns were incredibly diverse, you know, older women, younger women, wealthy women, poorer women, educated, not educated. But she's speaking in such a concise and powerful way of women's bravery and heroism, which is something we don't always hear about, you know, in the face of awakening, to not only overcome the time which didn't give women agency. You know, women were viewed as how can I say, the property of men, you know, as a wife, as a mother, as a queen. But this woman is living life on her own terms, finding awakening on her own terms, and she's speaking she's, you know, she's the center of her own story, the heroine, you know, the person who undertakes the heroine's journey, you know.
Exactly.
To overcome, trials and tribulations.
Yeah. And totally, you know, subverting the gender roles of her time, and you know, being very strong, courageous, bold, you know, empowering. And having all this imagery of fighting, striving, vanquishing, as a, you know, very strong, empowered woman. And to me, that poem was also very relatable because sometimes in monastic life it can feel like such a struggle. Both in terms of, you know, external conditions that are really tough, or also the internal mental development when you feel like you have so many defilements and you can't cope. So especially for women, I think external conditions can be very, very tough. Sometimes we have no place to stay. Conditions can be very, very harsh. And then as a woman, you really have to, you know, face the difficulties. I feel like courage is a very, very important quality in my monastic life. So I felt the poem was extremely relatable, and I found it very, very touching.
I think it's also the courage to keep going, you know, to get up again when you fall down.
Yes.
And, you know, to begin anew every day and keep walking, because the obstacles on the path can be subtle, but they can also be overt. And that's why you have to kind of keep always re-examining, you know, doing a radical inventory of yourself and seeing if you're moving forward on the path, or have you fallen into a bit of a stupor, a bit of a slump. And it's like, for women, unfortunately, because they're battling systemic oppression or patriarchy, as well as their own inner defilements. It's a double kind of battle. But that courage to keep going and to have faith in your own capacity awakening your own awakened potential is a wonderful metaphor. You know, the heroine is a wonderful metaphor of just cutting through obstacles, cutting through defilements. Yeah, that courage to keep going, that perseverance, and that faith in your own potential. Because so often women will be told, you know, you can't become a Buddha, you can't become awakened, you know, you should just pray to be reborn as a man. I've literally been told that.
Yeah.
Or that, you know, nuns have less merit, be humble and don't ask for too much, you know. So
don't practice for awakening yourself, just go and wash the monks' robes or clean the monastery or something. Yes.
Yeah, just serve, be humble. You know, and there's nothing wrong with service, but if women stop believing in themselves, you know, who does that really serve? Does that serve women's awakening? Not really. Does that really serve the Dharma to not have women's voices there? Not really. Is that compassionate? Not really, to half of humanity.
Yeah.
So the time has come for us to stop buying into ways of seeing women that dehumanize us, and that stop half the population from believing in their own awakened potential. And this woman believes in herself, not in a narcissistic way, but in a brave and heroic way, that she cuts through obstacles to pursue the beautiful path, the beautiful peace.
Yeah, and she makes it all the way to the end. You know, she knows that her courage has a purpose, and she knows that it was the right thing to do. And so she's encouraging others to do the same thing. So I think
it's a kind of, it's not a self-clinging self-confidence, but it's a kind of confidence that is rooted in an understanding of one's own value. And I think women need to reclaim that. You know, sometimes where the system of dominance that we live in, we sometimes see each other as a threat rather than as an ally, you know, and we need to start being each other's allies, you know, because every person has the potential for awakening, you know. So what does that mean? That means that instead of just always asking women to do emotional labor, that, you know, that emotional labor and that physical labor is shared, and that potential for awakening is nurtured in everybody.
Yeah, very, very beautiful, very touching how you said that just now. And I feel like there's also the other dimension to the poem, the inner work that everybody has to do for themselves, and you know, to really face up, to be courageous, to face up to your defilements, not to, you know, bypass and pretend that everything is happy and everything is fine and there's no issue. Like sometimes in Buddhism we also like pretend that we have to be happy and have full of metta all the time, and then we don't actually deal with our inner problems, our defilements. And the courage that we need to actually look at ourselves and admit to ourselves all the faults that we have, and to, you know, be clear that we ourselves are like, we have some work still to do, and only if we can see the work that we still have to do can we actually, you know, deal with those emotions and dissolve those defilements and let go of all those emotional blocks that we have. So, you know, the courage that we need, and the strength of, you know, running up against the wall of defilements, then, you know, getting pushed back, being overwhelmed again, next day again, you know, finding the courage to keep going. It's also something that I feel is very, very strong in that poem.
Yes, and that's beyond gender. You know, everybody has that battle. And just for people who are totally new to Buddhism, you know, Mara is the embodiment of ignorance. What do you think she means by Mara's mount? Rebirth? I'm not really sure. Ignorance?
Yeah, I wasn't fully sure either. I think he can have, I think he has a whole army of all the various defilements. He can mount many different. He can ride on many different defilements.
Yeah. I mean, it's true that the path of awakening is not always peaceful and not always easy, and it's okay to be real about that. You know, it's okay to realize I'm someone who has anger, I'm someone who has desire. The thing is to not let those things rule you, you know, but to know they're there and take care of them. You know, it's more that someone who is unaware of those emotions and suppresses them is more likely to be driven by them. And I think there is a certain kind of strength in the shadow, you know, in terms of it's the compost that makes the flowers grow, you know, the lotus grows from the mud, right? It's the shadow, there's a lot of energy tied up in our desire and our anger and our darkness, and our depression and our frustration, you know, and those are things that we work with for transformation. We can transform the energy tied up in those things, and that can become liberated, you know. So the path of liberation isn't just like magically you cut these things and they disappear. It's like you examine them over months and years, and you start to understand their causes, and then you can let go, you know, but only when it's been understood and the light has been shone on that, and you let go, you know, and it becomes food, fuel for the roses to grow, so to speak, you know. So it's not so much that we're running away from these things. We have to go through these things and understand them, and sometimes painfully take them apart, you know. But that's the work, and that's okay, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Embracing that shadow, embracing that those difficult emotions can be a cause for empathy, you know, as well.
Empathy, insight. Yeah, many beautiful qualities, actually. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think you can hold space for people until you've examined your own shadow, you know, as well.
Exactly.
So that is also facing the shadow and actually realizing the demons you face are more your inner demons anyway. You know, that is the heroine's journey, when they realize the demons are not external, you know, the demons are you.
Yeah, exactly. And once they have, you know, walked the path, they can guide others along the way. And only if you develop yourself can you help others to make progress also. Yeah. Okay, Ayya, thank you very much for coming on today. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
If you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the description box. We're going to have a live stream at the end of this series, and we're going to answer all your questions there. You can also join us live during the live stream and ask your questions. And the next episode of Finding Sanctuary will be uploaded tomorrow. And yes, Ayya, such a pleasure to talk to you today.
Likewise, thank you.